so lonely, to be in so much pain that someone would want to take their own life. That has been happening to many people around the world, and now with focus to those being detained and arrested in Iran. Psychiatrist Dr. Noshene Ranjbar sits down, talks about what you can do to help. Dr. Ranjbar, it is so good to have you. I'm so grateful for your time to talk about such an important and yet devastating thing that is happening with not only youth, adolescents, middle-aged, elderly, and we're talking about suicide. Why are we talking about suicide? Why would somebody want to take their life?
Yes, Shadi John. Trauma. Um, what we say in the psychiatry world is that when we're traumatized, it shatters our sense of self, who we are, what we believe in, if we feel like we belong anywhere, and it makes us question everything, the value of life itself. And the young people, they have all of these different pressures. So, fitting into their family and society, and there's a revolution going on. And then there are he said, she said, and concerns about mental health. And then they go through these incredibly challenging experiences, abuses. Sometimes, if they're arrested or yelled at or verbally or sexually or physically traumatized, it can make somebody question if they belong here at all, if they're ever going to get a sense of wholeness and humanity and ability to love and trust back. And so unfortunately, suicidal thoughts are quite common, in the young generation when there's trauma. And then now in Iran, of course, the suicide attempts and completed suicide is even more. We're seeing it way more than we would ever like to see it.
We'll get to the topic, Dr. Ranjbar, of suicide in Iran in just a moment. When you talk about suicide overall, I've been in the news industry for 23, 24 years. And one of the most troubling statistics that I've heard, and I've talked to a lot of doctors and psychologists, psychiatrists, medical professionals that have come on our show, and to hear the suicide rate in the youth, it's just unbelievable. I mean, right now, I think in the United States, it's one of, if I'm not mistaken, one of the leading causes of death for teenagers.
Unfortunately, yeah. And in some minorities, it's much worse. So, for example, I work a lot with Native American and Indigenous youth, and their rates are much higher than the general US population. So, it's not good.
When you talk about the suicide, and as a parent, I have 4 young children. It's one of those things that my kids, I always say, they're so young right now. I feel so good that they're at home. I can watch them. They're not driving around. They're not around a lot of other people. They're not really influenced yet by all the stuff that's out in this world waiting for them. I can't imagine what that would be like as a parent if your child, your baby, you raise them and they take their life. What every parent I know is going to ask, what do I do now to make sure that my kid never wants to do that they have value for their life?
Hmm. I guess my first invitation to parents is not to take on a sense of, it's hard to say, but not to feel like they can protect their children from everything and anything possible, because the world is a complicated, complex, messy place. And, I don't always share about this, but as a youth, I was suicidal and I actually tried to take my own life. And when you said that about you as a parent trying to protect your child, your children, I think about my parent, my dad at the time, and how horrendously difficult it was for him to watch his daughter, who's a young doctor, try to take her own life. And I'm beginning to talk about this more and more in public arenas, because we need to talk about these issues. Otherwise, it's not the kind of thing where we can just eliminate it and protect everyone and make it all better. There needs to be some awareness about the real risks and of course things we can do about it, but not to assume that somehow any of us are protected from mental illness and the possible pain that is out in the world for all of us.
I think anybody who's watching this, just like me, like I just stopped and I'm like, look at where you're at right now. You're successful, you're educated. Nobody watching this would guess and say, you tried to take your own life. Why?
Great question. Yeah. Well, so I guess I can share with you, I grew up in Iran. Like many people who grew up in Iran, I was 2 when the revolution happened, and I grew up in the Iran-Iraq War. And I remember running to the bomb shelters when the bombs were dropping, and life as a little girl in Iran was definitely not. I never learned how to deal with my emotions and how to speak up and how to be expressive and ask for what I need. Anyway, so then I left Iran. My mom passed away at a young age. I came to America, tried to survive and succeed in school and be a strong student and straight A's and all of that. And then I went to medical school and, was lucky to make it through that. But I started to have anxiety, whenever I had to go away on away rotations in medical school, where we had to go to some remote town and live there for 6 weeks and be in the hospital. I remember beginning to feel like I needed to be close to family, to be supported, to be around people that I saw as my community of support. And so that started. And then over time, it progressed to more anxiety and then depression. And of course, I'd never, known about any of these things. They never talked about it in my family. And so there was a lot of shame as to what's wrong with me. Why can't I, just get through this? Why can't I pull myself up with my bootstraps and get on with it? And I'm supposed to be a medical student and successful and all of these things. So I understand when people come to me and say, why can't I just make it go away? Just give me a pill, get rid of it. But for me, it went on, and I was in a toxic relationship that added to the stress, and I didn't know how to deal with it. I, like many young people, had never really learned the tools and been allowed modeling in my life, and my parents and my other adults around me about how to deal with real mental health, emotional challenges. And so it finally got to the point where I felt completely hopeless, and I tried to end it. And gosh, when I was in that state, and then I had to go through treatment and years and left medicine and came back. But I remember thinking there is no way I'm ever going to feel better. I'm ever going to feel normal. There's no way I'm going to be able to actually become a doctor eventually and have a position and be able to pay back my loans. How am I ever going to help take care of others if I myself, I'm struggling so much? But the reality is that we all fall. We all have imperfections. We all have troubles. Life is never going to be perfect. And now, 20 years later, looking back, everything that happened in those days and those years, all the resistance I had, all the, all the ways that I got in my own way, eventually, thankfully, I, hit rock bottom, and I was able to get the help I needed. And that started an entire healing journey and professional journey and growth journey that now allows me to be who I am, to be able to lend a hand to many people, but particularly my fellow Iranians and fellow doctors and fellow stressed out, women out there who, we get to these points where we're like, it's not going to work. Nothing's going to ever get better. And that's a dangerous place to be.
Thank you, doctor, for sharing such a personal story. When people hear other women, especially anyone in positions of success, to be able to hear their struggles, I just think it's one of the most empowering things that we can do for each other. Because if they say, well, if that person can go through it, then I can do it and I can come out of this as well. So I really appreciate you sharing something so personal with us. You said in there when you were talking that life isn't perfect, and so many of us, life has its challenges, right? Like the story that you're talking about, we all go to school, we have our stresses, and it's hard. It really is. You implement that kind of life now and you put it in Iran, where they already have their day-to-day challenges that they've had to been dealing with. But now the past 80 something days, their world has been turned upside down. And trauma has to be at a whole different level now for them.
Yes, that's what we call collective trauma, community-based trauma, population-based trauma. These are times that none of us are ever going to forget. This is not business as usual, as they call it. And so awareness of human needs, emotional needs, nervous system needs, trauma needs is at its highest requirement these days for all of us, whether we are in the middle of the streets demonstrating, whether we are at home worried about those who are demonstrating, whether we're those out in the West, watching our loved ones go through this period of history. We all have to be fully aware and learn techniques and skills and become good listeners and support each other, because that's the only way out.
Psychology and the world of psychology, we both know, has been a little bit of taboo in this community, in this culture. It took many years and still to this day, they're like, oh, I don't need help. How do you do that with a community already that pushes this away? And now they need it more than ever. You talk about the stories that we're seeing now of some of these young people who are being detained in Iran, and they come out and they're committing suicide. And most people will ask what the heck they have been through in those prison systems that they come out, now they're free, that they would want to take their own life. It's incredibly troubling, doctor.
Absolutely. Yeah. The best thing we can do is to be there for them. So that means the rest of us who have the capacity to listen, to support, to be aware of what they might be needing and what to provide, have to do everything we can in our power. Because one of the worst things in mental health is to feel alone, to feel like you're the only one. Nobody understands that you have this mark in your forehead saying, I'm broken. When somebody feels that way, they are really hard to support, because they feel like they're blocked. They're putting a wall sometimes in front of themselves. And so it takes family members, neighbors, village members, leaders, doctors, therapists, social workers who can relate, who can model authenticity, that yes, you're struggling and we're going to help you. We're not going to leave you alone. We will support you with whatever you need until you get to the place where you can have your hope back, where you can have your sense of humanity and wholeness back, and then borrow hope from each other. I remember I had a therapist in my darkest times where told me, Noshene, can you borrow some hope from me? And I thought, she is crazy. Like, this is not eggs that you go and borrow from your neighbors. But she was right. There's something about the energy of offering hope and holding a vision of healing for somebody until they're ready to embody it themselves. and it's free. you know
I
Hope is
love
free.
that. Hope is free. And I love this idea of, yes, you can borrow and share this with people who may not have it at that. I've been wanting to share my dance and my happy little moments because I have enough to share for
That's
people
right.
that may not have it at that time. And then when you want to give it back to me, just do it in the form of a little hug and a dance, and we're good.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something. Indigenous cultures all over the world, including our very beautiful Iranian heritage, is full of love. It's full of culture, it's full of beauty, it's full of compassion, art, music, poetry. That's where hope lies. It doesn't lie in the books necessarily, it doesn't lie in our head. It's a heart matter. And so when we're able to sit with someone, when we're able to genuinely be present with them, remind them of their strengths, remind them of all the gifts and capacity that they have inside, that you never know what you're going to say that is going to just click the right amount of spark in somebody that's going to hold them through that very 5 days, 10 days, 5 months of extreme suicidal thinking or hopelessness that they might experience. I was just speaking with another program this morning, and it is known that in the first 5 days after a release from prison, the rates of suicide, the possibility of suicide, is more than 8 times higher than any other time. So
From when
those first few days when the youth, say that again?
from when they're released from prison.
The first few days, first 5 or 6 days, is the highest risk period. And then the next few weeks is a little lower. And then right before their court case comes up, again, it goes up. So we have to know that these very sensitive periods are when the youth need our full attention. Everything else can wait. Someone needs to be with them all the time. Someone needs to comfort them, give them space, give them, get their friends to reach out to them, give them opportunities to be with people that they feel supported by. Don't ask them, what exactly happened to you? What did they do? If they're not ready to talk,
Don't
then
talk, don't tell them that. Like,
go ahead.
take us through those first few days, because we're seeing this a lot. I had a mother message me from Iran and said, please help. My kids were arrested. They've been released, and I don't know what to do with them. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to behave. So if you're saying that those first few days that they come out of prison, why? And then what are things that you should be doing and maybe should not be doing during that time?
Yeah. So the reason it's such a sensitive time is because, well, I mean, we don't really know, but my sense is that you're going from sometimes torture, sometimes crazy abuses, inhuman conditions, whatever, horrible things that no one should ever be exposed to. You're going from that to a normal world where people are going to work and, buying cheese from the store and, whatever. They're trying to live somewhat of a normal life. And so I can put myself in those shoes and think, no one's going to understand what I just went through. I can't even say anything about it because everyone's going to say, oh, you're making it up. That's like too crazy. That can't happen. Or maybe, somehow I'll say something and I'll get in trouble again and they'll take me back in because, they threatened me and said, don't say anything about what happened to you. So the level of tension and trauma is so extreme, and the difference between what one has just experienced and what everyone else is doing is such a big gap. And then the shame of, I'm broken and nothing's ever going to help. No one's ever going to understand. So that's part of the reason why right after those first few days are extremely high. It's like unthinkable pain, and people sometimes just want to check out and not want to be here.
What do? You want to talk to, if you're a parent watching this right now, let's say you're in this situation, you're a friend. Do you ask questions? Do you talk? Do you stay quiet? I mean, what do you do?
don't pry. Don't push them to talk about things that they're not ready to. It's okay to say things like, I can't even imagine what you've been through. If and when you're ready, I'm here. Just that. Less is more. The more you push, the inquisitive mind wants to know, tell me exactly what happened. And, I know in my relatives, sometimes people are so worried and their worry comes out as anger. Where did you go? Why did you do this? You shouldn't have gone into the street, whatever. So those unconscious reactions that are coming from a good intentioned place of care and support, but they come across as punitive or more shaming, as if then the person feels even worse. It's like, not only did I just go through that, and now, I'm with my loved ones who are so angry at what's happened that in some ways they're taking it out on me. So listening, asking them, what do you need? How can I support you? Make sure their physical body is not injured severely, because, like, check their eyes, make sure the eyes are not yellow, the white of the eyes, because these could be signs that, God forbid, there's like liver damage. Maybe they, took pills or something happened, or if they're dizzy or have really bad headaches, or, not acting right physically, take them to the urgent care. Like, don't wait for, for them to tell you what has happened. And give them time and space and surround them with people that they want to be surrounded with.
We have often heard, Dr. Ranjbar, those who commit suicide never tell you that they're going to do it. Is that true?
Well, no, I think a lot of times people give little signs or try to scream for help in the way that they know how. The best thing to do is to straightforward ask them, are you having thoughts of not being here? Are you having thoughts of hurting yourself? Because a lot of people are afraid to ask that. They're like, what if I say this and then I, put those thoughts in their head? But in the research, that is not what happens. People are actually relieved, even if they are having suicidal thoughts, to have someone who goes there and asks them that question can allow them to actually express and release the tension that maybe they've been feeling inside, but just didn't have a space that was safe enough to let it out. That itself can be therapeutic, much less knowing that there's someone who knows, and then they can watch you, or you can give them support and, take them to the doctor or whatever it is. But ask them, don't hesitate and say, oh, I shouldn't ask this.
These are momentarily things that we can do, but the real help is something that needs to be done with a professional. I assume what I'm saying is correct, because everybody wants to try to like fix things, or you think you can fix person, but really getting someone to a doctor or someone who can help them. I know you do work with the Center for Mind, Body, and Medicine. Can you tell us a little bit about that organization and how they are helping to support people in Iran?
Yeah, absolutely. So I found the Center for Mind Body Medicine as a psychiatry resident. I was going through my training and I was totally burned out. And I was looking for more holistic, more integrative, more compassionate ways, both to treat myself as a doctor, but also to provide care to others. And the Center for Mind Body Medicine was founded by Dr. Jim Gordon, who's a psychiatrist, about 30 years ago. And what the Center for Mind Body Medicine does is population-wide, community-wide trauma relief programming. So, they worked after 9/11 and after Katrina flood and after the hurricanes in Puerto Rico. They work in Kosovo and Gaza and Haiti and Ukraine. And what they do is they train teachers, mothers, community activists, doctors, therapists, psychologists, nurses in any community, in this case, Iran, in pretty intensive training that can take up to 6 months to a year to really have the people know what they're doing, and then supervises them and mentors them to provide these groups and workshops to children in the schools, to adults in the community, online, in person. And it's fabulous because it's a different kind of trauma support than what is possible in a one-on-one with a doctor or a nurse. We're never going to have enough psychologists and therapists and doctors to deal with the level and expanse of trauma that we're seeing in the world today. So these community-based activities that train the trainers, and then they go to support others, and they go to support others, is the medicine of the future. And then a few people can go see the doctor when they need it, as opposed to everyone needing a doctor. We just don't have enough. And it's important in trauma to empower people that they have the inherent capacity to heal. Because when we think that we need a doctor to give us a pill, we're going to be disappointed because there's no pill for trauma. And so, but when the empowerment is shifted towards the community, the individual, the family system, then it actually becomes more fun to be human instead of being a victim and having to go get somebody to fix us all the time. So I'm a believer. It helped me tremendously through my trauma. So I now support others, and it's a gift. It's one of those gifts that keeps on giving, because you're empowering people to empower people to empower people.
I could sit here and talk to you for hours, and we could, because there's so much to talk about. And hopefully you could come back and do this again in many different capacities. Before I let you go, for anybody that's watching right now that is feeling this collective trauma, no matter where you are in the world, whether you're in it, you're watching it, you're participating in it, you're an observer, whoever you are, what would your message be, Dr. Ranjbar, to all of them?
Friends, trauma, as horrendous and painful as it can be, it is also the point where transformation is likely to be possible. So sometimes, as a doctor, I ask people, have you experienced any traumas? And they're like, nope, nothing, zero. Well, if you ask our Native American elders, they would tell you that the first trauma every human experiences is being born into this world, because you're going from that completely cocoon, safe, everything provided, warm, loving environment of the womb, screaming into pain, coming into this world and having to hope that somebody is going to change your diaper and hear your language and meet your needs. So trauma is part of being a human. Of course, the kind that we're seeing in Iran is, a little different than the natural birthing process. But in some ways, every trauma is actually quite similar, that it can be this doorway that opens a community, a population, a culture into a new way of being. And what I see is that if we focus on what's happening to be a cultural revolution, a revolution of humanity, not just for Iran, but really we already see that this is impacting people all over the planet, then it shifts the way we see pain. We still see it, we still empathize, we still actively try everything we can to help, but we shift our perspective to one of expansive hope for healing and growth and even better days ahead. So don't give up hope.
Don't give up, and you can borrow it and share it with each other until it's yours. Dr. Ranjbar, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. All the best.